Sup? Welcome back. As I have said in a previous video, I have seen some pretty cool things in newspapers here in Japan. It is part of my job to read the newspaper every day and get interesting topics for our classes. So here we go. Here are like 5 good articles that I read about that help give me a bit of a global perspective on things that I think are interesting. Number 1, let's start out with a big congratulations for India. You see, my people? Yes, in India, same-sex is now legalized. This is huge. India is seen as a relatively conservative place. Heavy roots in religion and culture that span far longer than the United States' history does. This is really great. Congratulations, India. I have a lot of Indian friends, and I hope you are all doing well. Because love is love. And to me, I think it is openly weird for governments to try to control who people fall in love with. My opinion. Welcome to it. Alright, number 2. There was a study done in Japan that kind of illustrated that there's a big, they called it a generational conflict betwixt the younger generations in Japan and the older generations in Japan. The older generations seemed to believe that they were being represented in the government of Japan, and the younger generations didn't feel that way. I mean, this is an issue in almost every country, I think, right? Even when you're looking at the news from India, I mean, all the photos I saw online were of young people celebrating, not old. So it's interesting. You know, I know if you are big fans of manga and Japanese kind of anime and all that stuff, there's whole sections of manga that are made for guys loving guys manga. They're romance manga for gay men. But apparently, I haven't actually talked to anybody about this, but like I've heard that this is a popular genre for women to read. Like it's like a form of erotica, I guess. You know, I don't know. Maybe old people don't read those things. I know in America, the older generations, you know, they're not necessarily tech savvy, right? They grew up in a different time, right? Like my parents made more money than I'm making. After our depression, you know, younger generations are making like 30% less than their parents do. I found these pants, I've been looking for them for like 20 minutes. You know, so it's hard to say that our countries are not only divided by racial divides and monetary divides, but also by generational divides, right? And we're just constantly met with the battle, and it's sad to see that Japan is no different than my experiences in the United States. Maybe even a little more, since Japan is very monocultural and everyone here is Japanese and has Japanese ancestors and Japanese religion and Japanese houses and Japanese, right? It's all Japanese. So a younger generation that is growing up, you know, with different values and different things of interests, you know, it has to be hard for a country. Similarly, think of North Korea. K-pop is one of the biggest, in my opinion, best things to happen in North Korea, despite all the weird abuse that happens inside of corporate K-pop North Korea. You know, RM, Rap Monster, bing! He's the leader of BTS, the global K-pop phenomenon right now, and he's like a known advocate for LGBTQ+ rights. Well, it's known in Korea that is just not acceptable. Korea is just like Japan. It's very monocultural and very traditional. You know, all over the globe, we've got this thing going on where younger generations are, I mean, objectively more open to human experience. I don't know a good way to put it. I'm trying to be neutral, but it's clear that I'm a young person. Sorry. This monopod is the best thing to ever happen to me. Okay. Number 3. From Vietnam, Hanoi urges its citizens to stop eating dog meat. So cultural relativism is the principle that we should that we should not judge other cultures for what they do, because our culture also does things that they don't do. Right? You can't hate somebody for their cultural traditions because it's culture, right? It's like the reason, you know, if you're raised in the Middle East, you have a high probability of being Muslim, and if you're raised in America, there's a higher probability of being Catholic, right? We're all subjected to the environments in which we find ourselves, especially when we're vulnerable children. So it is culturally normal to eat dog meat in Vietnam. The article was pretty clear to say, we're not really trying to ban dog meat because it is such a vital part of the livelihood of some of these smaller towns and, you know, everything from the shipping to the breeders to the people that are selling it, right? Like, if you just ban it, like, all these people are going to be out of jobs, and Vietnam doesn't want that, and that's understandable. What gets me is they're really saying we should really take dog meat out of places that, you know, have a lot of tourism, because tourists are kind of perturbed by dog meat. While I am glad this conversation is being had, there is no difference between a dog and a cow. If you say a dog is smarter than a cow and therefore deserves life, then do people that score low on IQ tests not deserve to be happy? Like, what? Why is intelligence and value related? They both have eyes to see, noses to smell, ears to hear, mouths to feed. If anybody has ever worked with cows before, you know that cows are loving creatures. I'll link in the description below. There's a video of a guy just snuggling with a cow for like 5 minutes in his video. That's it. That's the entire video. Oh, dogs are man's best friends. There are people that have great relationships with all sorts of animals. Bunnies, elephants, sharks. You've seen the videos of people with sharks, of people with lions. And if you think intelligence is important in this battle, then stop eating pigs. They are geniuses. They have complex emotions and they communicate with each other. So the argument that dogs are close to humans and that dogs are more deserving of life than other animals that you enslave, murder, and consume, it's hypocritical. Call it out when you see it. It's hypocritical. But Vietnam, I wish you well. Good luck with the dog fight. They do not deserve to be in cages, just like any other animal. Hope I don't look a little red in here. Gotta do some dishes. So, number 4, Amazon's Jeff Bezos is donating $2 billion to a charitable fund. This will help open preschools in low-income neighborhoods and give money to nonprofits that help homeless families. Jeff Bezos, thank you. It's needed. That $2 billion is gonna help a lot of people. You have like hundreds of billions of dollars. What are you doing with that? That sounds a little harsh, but it's a good question, right? And I'm not necessarily railing against Jeff Bezos. I'm being critical of everybody that's wealthy, that's fabulously wealthy. There has to come a time where we as a society say, you don't need billions of dollars. It is expected that you give it to those that do. And if you know anything about wealth, right, like the top 1% of Americans hold 40% of America's wealth. They don't need the money. They don't need it. If God has taught me anything in my life, it's that if you have the ability to help somebody, you should. Am I guilty of not helping people sometimes? Yeah. Absolutely. We all are. It sounds like too little too late to me. And I hate the news. Okay, another piece of news that has actually reached Japan regards children being separated from their parents at the border in the United States. Yes, that makes news in Japan. I have one point of criticism on this, and this is directed towards Republicans that are Christian. Would Jesus segregate, persecute, and deport children and families that are fleeing drugs and violence in search of a better life in a country that has the resources and the means and the security to give them a better life? I know my answer. I know mine. There have also been a number of huge storms around the world. To all the Americans affected by the hurricane, I hope you're doing well. Stay safe. It's hard to see that when I'm all the way in Japan, you know, when your home country's in kind of some trouble. The Philippines also just got hit by a pretty big tropical storm, maybe a typhoon, maybe a hurricane. I don't remember what it was. So I hope you are all doing well. That was a week ago or so. China, I think, is about to get hit by one. And a few weeks ago, Japan was hit by a pretty strong typhoon, and then right after an earthquake. And the combination of the rainfall and the earthquake melted hillsides all around this place, if you can see it here. These storms are only going to get worse. Our climate isn't looking too hot right now. How do you like that pun? Gotta iron my shirt now. Sorry this has turned into such a negative episode. I'm not a negative person. I'm just critical. And I'm passionate. I don't think that's a bad thing. So this last piece of news, I would lose myself if I didn't talk about inequality against women That's not me being facetious. In Japan, in Tokyo, I believe it was a medical school that was intentionally doctoring, no pun intended, the females' test scores for their eligibility to be doctors and work in the workplace. Why did they do this? Well, they're not necessarily just saying we hate women, they make bad doctors, like men are better doctors. I think it had to do with women leaving the workforce to raise a family. And the hospitals didn't want to bring on staff members that weren't going to be able to work always for a long period of time. So it was almost like a business investment, a stupid business investment. While I understand their concerns, it's indicative of a larger social problem in Japan. There aren't a lot of daycares. It is very challenging to not raise your kids on your own. And Japan's population is declining. You know, a lot of women were cited as being uninterested and or disgusted by sex, and part of it had to do with the competition in the workplace, because if they knew that if they had kids, you know, they wouldn't be able to keep their job. That's really bad. It's really hard to hear, especially as a man not in a relationship. Love me! I don't even want kids right now. Again, I am sorry for being negative, but I want to ask you one question. It's hypothetical, it's rhetorical, you don't have to answer it. But I want you to think, every morning, how can I be more compassionate today? How can I be more compassionate today? We don't live in the happiest world. And there are people that can use our help. So there you have it. Thanks for sticking around. This was my first news day, so how'd it go? Tomorrow, we're doing tech review. Really, I really need to figure out what I'm gonna do. Take it easy, have a good day. Happy Thursday. Weekend's almost here. Bye, everybody.
Hi, you've reached Antony. Please leave a message after the beep. Thanks.